players that become all-time greats. Trae Young, he has his downsides, but if he hits, he could be an all-time great.
If you're the Cavaliers and you're going to lose LeBron James, I think at 8, if Michael Porter Jr. is gone, I think Trae Young's the guy that they have to pick, because you've got to build some excitement back in your building. And depending on what direction they want to go in, I know we've talked about, do they try to figure out a way to package, a Love and a J.R. Smith? That was something you had talked about pre-show as well, of trying to get a quicker rebuild and get some cap space back in, where they're probably going to be at the top of the lottery for the next few years. But you look at a guy like Trae Young, you're like, the upside is Steph Curry. The downside, maybe he's a guy that comes off the bench and can give you 18 to 22 minutes a night of just pure scoring. And you're not dependent on him to be a defensive stopper, and you're not going to worry about, the Cavs are going to be so far from the playoffs, they're not going to have to worry about all that switching and stuff that happened with Steph Curry. They have to get there first. And again, when you have a player that can offset the defense with his offense and that skill set, we've seen that is a great place to start building your franchise back. And if that's where Trae Young can be, he's already proved he can flat out score regardless, and there wasn't a lot of help for him on Oklahoma. There probably won't be a lot of help on a bad team, but he's going to get a lot of shots and a lot of playing time. So if he's going to be exciting, at least build some excitement back and get yourself maybe a piece that you can build from in the future.
Well, and I think you make a great point that he is a name. He's a guy that people have been watching. He's a guy that ESPN and The Ringer and other people have been talking about in the media. We know he can score. We know he can pass the ball. His defense is suspect. But I don't really see that that's a huge deal because, well, Steph Curry's not the best defender on Golden State. And a guy like James Harden can shoot lights out, but he's not going to give you a whole lot of effort on defense. That might be something. Trae is young enough that, you're not going to develop James Harden into a good defender at this point in his career. But Trae Young could be developed at least into an average defender. And then as long as he can still shoot and pass the ball, you're right. At the very worst, he's going to be six-man, and he could be a darn good six-man.
Well, that's a wrap for segment 1. When we come back, it's Talkworthy time. We'll discuss the U.S. Open and all the happenings in Shinnecock Hills. We'll then kick it over to the World Cup to talk about what's been going on in Russia. And if we have time, we might bring back the lightning round. A couple listener questions we'll fire off to each other. That and more when we come back. We're back, and it's Talkworthy time, and let's talk about the U.S. Open. For the first time in nearly 30 years, Brooks Koepka went back-to-back at the U.S. Open, taming the extremely tough Shinnecock Hills on Sunday with a score of +1 for the tournament. But, Eric, we have to talk about the PGA and, again, the lack and the inability to capitalize on their young star power. Everything that I heard after the tournament into Monday was all about the two big controversies that came off of the tournament. But I didn't see or hear much about Brooks Koepka. I didn't see him on ESPN during the car wash where you'll see guys that come on and do Golic and Wingo, and then they do SportsCenter hits, then they're on First Take, and they just work their way down through the number of shows. Same way with FS1. Now, they're not doing as much coverage because of the World Cup, but there's certainly national programs that would probably love to have the U.S. Open winner doing some kind of interviews, building his star power, building that brand. The only thing I saw was a email I got from Nike that told me I could shop the Brooks Koepka collection, which I didn't know existed until I got that email. But again, here we are with golf. Brooks Koepka winning back-to-back is just a blurb, and everything is about the course and a player chasing a ball down, and not about the fact that here's a guy that's just going back-to-back coming off a significant wrist injury in Koepka.
He did one of the hardest things to do in the history of golf, which is to win 2 United States Opens back-to-back. The last player to do it was Curtis Strange, and that happened in the 80s. So like you said, nearly 30 years ago, 29 years to be exact. The last player to do it before Curtis Strange was right after World War II. We're talking about a championship that has a 104-year history. It simply doesn't get done very often. It's a very hard thing to do in sports. And so to your point, the PGA Tour, once again, rather than capitalizing on the fact that they now have a huge superstar in Brooks Koepka who has just as much power, just as much talent as a guy like Dustin Johnson, and they're really not doing much with him, then you add in the fact that Dustin Johnson is there in contention once again in the U.S. Open. The guy is amazing. He's had heartbreak in the U.S. Open several times. He's won a U.S. Open. He seems to be an annual contender in this championship, which is the best of the best. So you have Dustin Johnson, and then they're not capitalizing on him. Then you had your Masters champion in Patrick Reed right there in contention for most of the day. He came out hot on Sunday. He had every bit of a chance to win this championship. I haven't seen anything about him. You have England's superstars, Justin Rose, Tommy Fleetwood. There were names on this leaderboard that really made golf exciting that aren't named Tiger Woods. Look, we wanted Tiger Woods to make the cut. It didn't happen. So the PGA Tour, the USGA, they didn't have Tiger's name. Did they capitalize on the stories that happened? No, they didn't, because of what the USGA screwed up on Saturday. And I know I have some fans and some listeners and some friends, all of which disagreed with my points of view. I was very hard on the USGA on Saturday night into Sunday, and a lot of people disagreed with me. But I think a lot of people in the golfing world agree with what I'm saying, including a lot of the sportscasters on the Golf Channel. The USGA screwed up on Saturday at Shinnecock Hills, and that was the main story. And to go along with that on Saturday afternoon, you had Phil Mickelson break 3 rules of golf, and they assessed a penalty based on the lightest possible outcome. It just blew up on Saturday, and it was everything but Brooks Koepka. Now, Justin, I know I'm involved in the names of golf a lot more than you are, just like you're involved in the names in basketball a lot more than I am. So from a name perspective, take that out of it. To you as a casual fan, I know you're a guy who loves Tiger, but you were following along in the U.S. Open with what happened to the course on Saturday and what happened with Phil Mickelson on Saturday. Did that catch your attention and kind of draw you away from what was happening on the leaderboard?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I was definitely following along with the tournament. And actually, I had gone out on Saturday to pick up takeout, and I was sitting there waiting, and I see this story of Phil swats and chases ball. And he's like standing there, like throwing his arms up. And I was like, did someone hit a ball at him? Did a fan like throw a ball at him? At this point, I had no idea until I saw the video. And then you're watching Tony Finau and Daniel Berger, who've been done for hours, who were down and towards the bottom of the leaderboard. The guys actually made the cut. And these guys are just
they're leading the tournament,
shooting to the top of the leaderboard, kicking back, eating their dinner and whatever else they were doing, just watching the field come back as they just blew past guys. So I thought that was pretty incredible. And I know I was following you on Twitter, and you did not have nice words to say about the USGA and what they had done to that golf course, and essentially made 2 different golf courses where they penalized players that should be at an advantage of playing later because of the scores they put up from Thursday and Friday rounds. So let me ask you this, taking out the fact that the USGA, they came out and admitted that they botched the course up, that they didn't factor in the wind enough, and the course basically got away from it. They tried to make it up by giving a more favorable, fair course on Sunday. Do you like the fact that the USGA for the U.S. Open makes the course so difficult? Do you feel like that's good for the TV fans for that specific major? Or would you rather see them dial it back some to actually reward the players for the great shots that they hit?
Well, you just hit it right there. Shots that are good need to be rewarded. That's not what happened on Saturday. You had players that had to play away from the pins so dramatically in order to get the ball to stay on the green, and then they were faced with a 40 or 50-foot putt that they had to putt defensively, and if they got it going a little bit too much, it was going to roll off the side or roll off the front of the green. Then they're forced with a chip again. That's what led to the whole Mickelson controversy. He was putting from above the hole. It rolled down below the hole. It was going to keep trickling, and he said, nope, forget about that. He ran down and swatted at it. The fact that when he swatted at it, it went toward the hole is actually what saved him and what allowed the USGA to apply Rule 4-5 rather than Rule 1-2, which let's not get into the weeds of all that. But basically, if he had swatted that ball in a direction other than toward the hole, he would be called to have been deflecting that ball, which is a much more severe penalty than the 2-stroke penalty that he received for just playing a stroke on a moving ball. But I digress. Let me go back to what your question was. That's the Mickelson thing in a nutshell. What you said was perfect. Does the USGA set up the golf course so that it provides the TV viewers and the challenge to the players in this once-a-year type of thing with the U.S. Open, and everybody expects it to be hard and all that stuff? Let's kind of compartmentalize that just for a moment. When you pick great courses like Marion and Pebble Beach and Pinehurst and Shinnecock Hills, and the list goes on and on, Bethpage Black, these courses stand on their own merit. They do not need the USGA to come in and manipulate the golf course to create artificial conditions. That's essentially what they did, and that's the issue that I have. I have absolutely no issue with par being a good score rather than a birdie fest. So some of the Twitter followers that I have and some of my friends who say, well, what about last year at Erin Hills when they were shooting 16 under, 17 under? Is that what you'd rather have? No, that's not what I'm saying. And if that's what you think I'm saying, you're completely missing the point. Par should be a good score at a U.S. Open.
I think what you're saying is the field shouldn't average 5 over par on a Saturday, on moving day.
They might, but it should be on the merit of the course being challenging, not the USGA putting pins in ridiculous conditions and then hoping that the wind doesn't blow and dry out the greens and make them impossible to play. You can't set up a golf course that's right sort of on the edge for the morning players because it becomes impossible for the afternoon players. And it's not that I thought that the afternoon players should be given an advantage. Another follower had said, well, so you're saying that the course should just be easier for those guys in the afternoon. No, that's not what I said either. But they shouldn't be set up so that their rounds are just impossible. The fact that Dustin Johnson shot even par in his last few holes, or the fact that Brooks Koepka only shot a couple over par on Saturday, is amazing. Yes, but you can't use that against me and say, well, see, Dustin did this, or see, Brooks did that. Yeah, I get it. What about the other 60 players who shot 1 million on Saturday? And nothing against Tony Finau, nothing against Daniel Berger. They did nothing wrong. By going out Saturday morning and playing good golf, they did absolutely nothing wrong. And I actually love Tony Finau. But they were starting to have a Ben Curtis moment there on the USGA. Ben Curtis is a guy that won the British Open years back because he finished really early on a Sunday. Then the conditions got terrible, and he sat in the clubhouse and watched everybody else fall behind him, and he ended up winning the British Open. Ben Curtis never did anything again after that. It was like a moment like that where Berger and Finau just got to sit there while Dustin Johnson's lead just kept dwindling away and away and away, and by the end of the day, they were the final group. You can't do that. And then look what the USGA responds with on Sunday. Ridiculous. They soften the greens, they put the pins in easier locations, and it was what I call their I'm sorry routine. If you have to do an I'm sorry routine because you screwed up on Saturday, again, you're manipulating the golf course. Just let the golf course be what it is. Shinnecock Hills has greens that were designed 100 years ago. They were designed with a stemp meter rolling at 6 feet or 7 feet, not 16 feet. And so you can't take greens like that and bake them out and then put pins on the edges. The ball's never going to stay there because that's not what those greens were designed for. Put them at 12 or 13 on the stemp. Put the pins in reasonable locations and then do nothing. Don't water it. Don't dry it out. Just don't monkey around with it. Just let the course be what it is. Shinnecock Hills, I feel bad for their members. That course is a great course. I think the U.S. Open should continue to go there, but I think the USGA needs to learn how to keep their hands off of it.
Hopefully they learn for next year going to Pebble Beach and they don't do this again, that they actually have a course for 4 rounds that doesn't play like a different course every single day if no weather's involved. They just have to have some consistency on there. It's okay if it's hard. I think as fans, we don't care if the players are 30 under going into the final round or plus 10. If there's 4, 5, 6, 7 guys involved and they're the biggest names in the sport, that's what you want to see coming down the stretch, is that when these guys are up on 16, 17, 18, that they're playing for something, that you don't have somebody that's 5, 6, 7 strokes out in the lead and you're like, okay, we're at 12 or 13. Unless there's a catastrophic failure by this golfer, there's no reason to watch. They're going to cruise in. So your point's right on the money. You're playing at the preeminent golf courses in this country. You don't have to go create something like it's a video game just to make it harder. You can do some things to make it harder, but the course shouldn't be the star. It's just like a game where referees shouldn't be the star. It's the same thing. The ambience of the course should be there. You should be able to view it. It should look great on your TV, but it should not be the lead story. The other lead story that came out, Eric, was what I'm trying to teach my daughter not to do when we play golf, which is when you putt the ball, don't chase it down and hit it while it's still moving. I never thought that one of the biggest names in the sport would have a moment where he melted down. I know golf purists are going crazy with this. Phil should have been DQ'd. It's a black eye for the sport. It's hard for me to say as a golfer who has lost my mind at times, and I think I'm on my 3rd pitching wedge because of the frustration I've taken out. So it probably would have been smarter at times to go hit a moving ball. But I just thought about here was Phil. He misses a putt. That's 1. He runs down, smacks it moving. That's 2. He misses the comeback there. That's 3, and he knocks it in. That's 4, and he took a 2-shot penalty. That's a 6. If he would have let the ball put it out, I'm pretty